Let me read to you a passage from the 12th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, verses 54 to 59. It's the Gospel for Friday of the 29th week in Ordinary Time. St. Luke writes, Jesus said to the crowds, "When you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say, 'It is going to rain,' and it does. And when the south wind blows, you say, 'It is going to be hot,' and it is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky. How is it that you do not know how to interpret this present time? Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? As you are going with your adversary to the magistrate, try hard to be reconciled to him on the way, or he may drag you off to the judge, and the judge turn you over to the officer, and the officer throw you into prison. I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny." That's from Luke chapter 12, verse 54 to 59. It suggests thoughts about God's call. What do I mean? Well, it is a sad thing in a person's life if he is not making plans. That is to say, it is very unfortunate if he is simply taking each day as it comes and not attempting to build his life more or less according to a judicious plan. It is man's glory to make of his life a real work. And I suppose one could say that most people live out their lives broadly according to a chosen agenda. That is to say, life unfolds with various opportunities before them, and their course is determined by their choosing to make something of those opportunities. In this perspective, life is often seen as being a matter of what I choose to make of things. But there is another perspective. Of course, I must choose. But in this other perspective, my choice is not the pivotal, creating, and defining element. What is more fundamental is the objective call, which I then choose to hear, accept, and follow. In this, the dominant factor is not interior or subjective, that is to say, my power to determine, but objective and coming upon me. It is something I sense and discover as being over my own self. Human life is defined not simply by my choice, but by that to which I am called as a duty. It is this which I choose to accept, because I perceive that I should accept it. It is this which constitutes my true work in life. My agenda is to be set not simply by my choice, but by my calling. I am referring to that call which comes from God. Many people never discover such a thing in their lives, but the entire sweep of the Scriptures speak of this call and describe it. The whole life of the chosen people of God, with its mission ultimately to the world, is based on it. Abraham received a call from God, and his response to it ultimately brought a blessing to the families of the earth, as the book of Genesis puts it. The patriarchs received a call from God, as did Moses and the prophets. God called his people to be his people and to live according to his commandments, promising that if they did, he would be with them as their God. Finally, in the fullness of time, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. Christ called his disciples and formed his church, and through the church, each of us has received our call. Each member of the church has been called to holiness of life and to a share in the mission of Christ. Our life is fundamentally a matter of hearing the call that comes from Christ and living according to it. The human being, if he is alert to the intimations of his heart, senses that this basic call of God coming to him in the first instance in his conscience puts him on notice that there will be a future reckoning. There is a vague sense in the heart of man that a judgment on him is coming. This is powerfully confirmed by divine revelation, and in particular by the teaching of Jesus Christ, who taught the particular and general judgment of God. Each of us will be judged on how we have chosen to respond to the call of God to do his will. Our Lord refers to it in the gospel I read earlier, in his short parable referring to the magistrate. As you are going with your adversary to the magistrate, try hard to be reconciled to him on the way, or he may drag you off to the judge, and the judge turn you over to the officer, and the officer throw you into prison. I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. Luke chapter 12. We must live in a manner worthy of the call that we have received, as St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Ephesians. Brothers and sisters, I, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1. The particular implication of this is that St. Paul sets before us how we should be united, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Unity in our families, unity in our parishes, unity in our diocese, unity with the universal church, unity with others in the truth of God so far as this is possible. All this flows from our common call from God, our Father, to live in Christ. Let us think of God's call to us in our life, which is made up of the numerous calls of grace in everyday life. Of course, our call from God reaches beyond mere observable deeds. We should aspire to think in a way worthy of our calling, thinking the thoughts that are worthy of one who lives in Christ. Let us remember that God sees all, including our most secret thoughts. Indeed, the decisive battle for holiness of life will be waged within the secret recesses of our mind and heart. St. Paul's directive in his letter to the Philippians is most important: to let this mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus. Chapter 2, verse 5. Living in a way worthy of our calling has implications also for the way we speak. St. James in his letter has important things to say about the power of the human tongue to do good or evil. It is a fire, he says. Chapter 3, verse 6. We have the power to choose. We also have a call from God. That call is the basic reality of human life. Our choice must be determined by the call of God. Let us resolve to live a life worthy of our Christian calling, thinking as Christ would want us to think, speaking as he would want us to speak, and acting as he would want us to act. Our Christian calling must be the deciding factor in absolutely everything we do, think, or say.